Dan Dickau here, Gonzaga Nation SI, the Gonzaga Nation Media Network. We've got a quick update on the NBA Draft Combine. I've touched on it a number of times in the last few weeks about the importance of it for the Gonzaga Bulldogs that are in that boat where they could stay in with a tremendous performance, or they could come back to school and really bolster the outlook for Gonzaga this upcoming season. We all knew, as again, Chet Holmgren, foregone conclusion, who he was going to be a one and done. He has not gone through the testing at the draft combine, and that's typical of a top 3-4 pick. Many times those guys who are electing to be a part of the combine with interviews, but not being a part of the workouts, will have their own separate testing for each of the individual teams at the top of that draft board that's strongly considering them. So not too surprised we haven't seen the numbers come out on Chet Holmgren as far as sprint, three-quarter sprint, lane agility, vertical, which is standing static straight up, max vertical, shuttle run, height, weight, body fat, and then the shooting numbers. So not surprised that we haven't seen that, but it's good and it's important. It's fun to track the three other Gonzaga Bulldogs. Andrew Nembhard, because it's the third time he's declared for the draft, he does not have the ability to come back to school, as we talked about. He had a good showing yesterday at the combine in regards to the physical testing. He was second in the lane agility behind none other than Julian Strother. So that's impressive. Lane agility is where essentially you take the painted area of the floor, you sprint from baseline to elbow, slide, defensive slide from, say, left elbow to right elbow, back pedal, slide back, sprint, slide, back pedal. So it's essentially testing your ability to change speeds and change directions quickly. And so for Strother and Nembhard to be 1-2, that's pretty darn impressive in regards to that. But staying on the topic of Andrew Nembhard and what he showed, his static vertical, 26.5 inches, which is about what I would expect for a good, not overly explosive athlete like Andrew Nembhard. And his max vertical was 35 inches. So to give you a little bit of a comparison, who tested out the highest at their max vertical, Kennedy Chandler, the freshman from Tennessee, he had the highest max vertical of 41.5 inches. So 35 inches of a max vertical for a guard is kind of right about in the midpoint, the mid-range. So a good showing there from Andrew Nembhard. When you look at the body fat, he was one of the lowest in the country in the combine, right around 4.5. His height was right around 6'4" without shoes. So that's a tremendous asset for him to have. He tested out well in the shooting drills yesterday, which is one of those great things. I actually had a chance to talk with assistant coach Stephen Gentry yesterday, who's back in Chicago, kind of just being around, being a resource for the Gonzaga guys who are there, as is Brian Michelson. But he's a resource back there just to kind of support the guys, kind of continue to build his network amongst NBA front offices and agents so he can answer questions when they come up. But, one of the great things about Andrew Nembhard that is starting to be asked by a lot of front offices is the fact that, okay, so early in his career, the first couple of years, he was shooting it right around 32% from three. As a senior, he shot around 38%. So that's starting to kind of really spark their interest and say, hey, you know what? He is a better shooter than maybe we had in our notes from early in his career. So he's really improved upon that. I thought he had a nice showing at the combine with the shooting drills yesterday. So all in all, so far, a good performance from Andrew Nembhard. Today's a great day because they start breaking out into the games. Then you can actually watch them on ESPN. The NBA Draft Combine games where teams are split up. Guys are split up into as even of teams as possible. I know a lot of times when these teams are put together by the NBA front office evaluators, try to get as even a teams as possible so that they can have competitive games, and then they try to play out of NBA type philosophies and actions, both on the offensive end of the floor and the defensive end of the floor, with the spacing, play with the pace, play with the 24-second shot clock as opposed to a 30. So it's going to be fun to watch Nembhard play. When you look at this year's draft, there's not a ton of point guards that really jump out at you. I know I went through some NBA draft mock boards, and there was a few that had him in the second round. The more I'm reading into this and the more I've talked to some people, I'm pretty comfortable that Nembhard will be drafted, which is awesome. And more than likely, it's probably going to be in the 40s. And if he has a good showing in Chicago, I think he can definitely solidify himself as a true draft pick. And I think one of the other reasons why is the NBA game is so predicated on pick and roll reads and making plays for others. And that's one of Nembhard's great strengths is his ability to pass and make things easy for others, but in particular, make things easier for others out of pick and roll settings. So things are really trending in the right direction for Andrew Nembhard. It's really, really fun to see that occur for him. Staying on the guards with Gonzaga, Julian Strawther, talked about it, number one in the lane agility. Again, that's a great, sign to be able to show that you can change speeds, change directions, accelerate, decelerate really quickly. His vertical, just standing static, was 28.5, and his max vertical was 35. Again, the best max vertical of anybody was Kennedy Chandler from Tennessee at 41.5. Strawther's three-quarter court sprint, just a shade under 3.4. And actually, sorry, I didn't mention this about Andrew Nembhard, 3.02 seconds. So he had one of the fastest, I believe it was the fifth fastest time in the combine at the three-quarter court sprint. And for wings, Julian Strawther performed well with 3.37 seconds in his three-quarter court sprint as well. He tested out normal, or what you would consider normal or acceptable for an NBA size wing as far as his height, his weight, his body fat. Nothing to be alarmed of there. Good wingspan, but I think where he maybe really did himself a benefit is in the shooting drills yesterday. He was number one in shooting off the catch. He was top 3 in both shooting off the catch as well as off the dribble. You look at Strawther's shooting numbers from a season ago. I would have, I still say this, he's more comfortable in Gonzaga's offense of being a find an open space catch and shoot guy. I think he's becoming and became over the course of the season a really good wide pin down guy. Read it to curl, read it to flare, read it to straight cut. Catch and shoot. I think what he proved in yesterday's shooting drills at the combine is the ability to put it on the dribble for one deck, put it on the deck for one dribble and raise up and shoot it. His mechanics are solid, they're smooth, they're fluid. And I think, with confidence, you go into these drills, which I'm sure he was prepared for. You can put your best foot forward and really create a little buzz. I would imagine after day one, there's a little bit more interest that is created around Strawther. So for a Gonzaga fan wanting him to come back, maybe you're kind of on the fence, but there's a lot of basketball left to be played the next couple of days in Chicago with the combine, with the game starting up. And I think that's really going to be where Strawther either cements himself as, yep, he's completely getting drafted, or he's going to learn some of the things that he really needs to focus on and work on to be able to get to that point. Right now, I think it's still too early to tell, but I know I've said I think he comes back for 1 year and all of a sudden, he's a 16, 17 point a game guy, depending on if Timmy comes back as well. But even if Timmy comes back, you're looking at a tremendous 1-2 scoring punch in Timmy and Strawther, maybe the best returning 1-2 scoring punch in the country. I know I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I can't imagine, quickly thinking through college basketball landscape off the top of my head, that there would be two other returning players with the production that they had. if that were to come to fruition. But that brings us to the biggest question mark that, every Gonzaga fan is keeping their eye on: how Drew Timme performs in the NBA Combine. And then what is his decision like? I honestly think he's going to take his time. He's going to, research the heck out of this. And, he's got to follow his heart. He's got to follow his passion. I think if he comes back to Gonzaga, he's got a chance to be one of the all-time greats in college basketball over the last 30 years. He's obviously a Gonzaga all-timer at this point in time, but he could, really cement himself as, the top 2-3 Gonzaga Bulldogs of all time, if he does come back. But I also understand the angle of, he's been in college for 3 years. He's been an All-American for 2 of them, played in a Final Four. What else is there for me to do? His passion, as most players are, has always been to play in the NBA at the next level. And why don't we get that started? So I see it from both angles, but this is an important week. I think for the games in the Combine, not so much as for the numbers of the testing. I mean, if anybody goes and watches the games over the past couple of years, do you understand that Drew Timme is a little bit undersized as a 5 or even as a 4 at the next level? He measured out slightly smaller than people had anticipated. His wingspan wasn't maybe what the prototypical big man in the NBA is. His athleticism doesn't test out quite as well as maybe some people would want. His body fat was not what people would expect of an NBA player. But at the same time, you can't fool yourself when you look at Drew Timme and his body of work. It's about production, and it's about impacting a game in a win-loss column. When you look at Drew Timme, you can't look at the physical attributes or the numbers and how they test out, or the shooting percentages, and get a full picture of Drew Timme. I think the big thing is now is he goes, plays in these Combine games, and he searches out mismatches that he can take advantage of, whether it's at the nail area, whether it's off the mid post, whether it's getting a rebound and pushing in transition and being creative, which is one thing we've seen from him. I think another big thing in these pre-draft Combine games for him to showcase and show is they're going to put him in switches, in pick and roll settings and in isolations when he's on the defensive end of the floor. It's no different than what he saw at Gonzaga over the many games over the last year or two. But how does he guard that? Does he influence it to where there's help when he's put out on an island? Does he give away straight line drives? Does he understand schematically what they're going to try to implement on the fly for these teams in the Combine defensively? I think those are the more important things that NBA front offices are going to be looking at. He's a really unique test case in the fact that he can score on anybody. He proved it over the course of the last couple of years. But is there a team, and it only takes one to draft you or believe in you to sign you to a contract? Is there a team that believes that he can come in and be that difference maker as a low post threat, low post scorer for a second unit? And I think that's where, if he can prove himself out in some of these Combine games, all it takes is one team to fall in love with him and what he can provide to their team, to make them say, hey, we're going to draft you, or we're going to give a promise that we're going to sign you as a free agent, because there's lots of those deals that are talked about before the draft. So interesting day yesterday with the timing of the drills, the timing of the measurements and when they came out. Some good, some bad, some just up in the middle for Gonzaga. But today's another exciting day for Drew Timme, Andrew Nembhard, Julian Strawther to put their best foot forward when the games begin at the NBA Draft Combine. So appreciate you listening in. I'm sure we'll recap a little bit over the next couple of days how the Draft Combine has gone for those 3 guys, as well as present another review of some mock drafts in the next few days now that the lottery selection order is finalized. So for Gonzaga Nation SI on the Gonzaga Nation Media Network, I've been your host, Dan Dickau.